Thank you for being here. As is customary, I've asked my staff to give me a brief review of what went on at the APNU press conference. And as usual, they said nothing much. And we've come as a country to expect that. Nothing much from their press conferences. A lot of verbiage and a lot of commitments that we know we've come to expect APNU never to fulfill. But some very dangerous things, I heard a few dangerous things were mentioned at the press conference. Dangerous from my perspective. So it's either one thing is happening in this country, that the media has totally decided that what Mr. Norton says has no worth, or they're not doing their job. So a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Norton said they were contesting in practically all of the local government areas and all of the constituencies in the country. The constituencies in the country. We said that is not so. Mr. Norton rebutted that statement and said that the PPP is lying. They're doing rehab downstairs. Zulfi, you want to tell them to fix it? It's Freedom House, yeah. So we have some rehabilitation going on. So Mr. Norton rebutted what I said and said to the country, Jagdeo is lying. The following week, the chairman of that party mentioned the same thing, Mr. Holder. He said that they were contesting practically all the areas in the country. So I shared with the media a list, a spreadsheet, pointing out in great detail for every local government area across Ghana and in every constituency who were contesting, whether it's APNU, PPP, or individual and other groups. It was given to the media last week. I've not seen any robust engagement from the part of the media with Mr. Norton to say, here are the specifics provided by the People's Progressive Party to prove that you're lying. And what is your response to the specifics? So at today's press conference again, he was given a free pass. And that is why I'm saying it's either the media is not diligent enough or it just doesn't really care about his opinion. But today, he did something very dangerous today. He said, we're contesting, but we're contesting practically implying that all the so-called independent groups were part of the APNU's front, and they didn't contest as APNU in these areas, but as independent group. So this is dangerous because if it is true, APNU is one, trying to disguise itself in some of these local government areas because it's a shame of its track record. And if it is not true, then what he has done, he's branded all of those individuals and group contesting outside of APNU in these local government areas as APNU fronts. So it's very, very dangerous for those people who are contesting now, because he's implied that they're all APNU fronts. What is Jagdeo saying? We're contesting in practically all, but we're not contesting as APNU. We're contesting with these front organizations. So these organizations and individuals have a duty now to say to the country that that's not so, and disassociate themselves publicly from APNU, lest they be branded as APNU front organizations in these areas. But even with the individuals and other groups contesting in some of the local government bodies, these are the statistics. We have APNU contesting in 260 of the 610 constituencies. Groups and individuals are contesting outside of those 260 areas, another 58 in addition to that, the 260. So that takes you to 318 constituencies of the 610, where you have APNU and individuals or groups contesting. 318 of the 610 constituencies. So you still have 292 constituencies where neither APNU or individuals or groups are contesting in the country. So that means that the PPP has won in those areas already, 292 of the 610. And that could be factually checked. And we're also aware that APNU is not contesting in 25 local government areas, but other groups are contesting. So of the 80 local government areas across the country, 67 are contested by APNU or other groups or individuals. So that means 13 of the LAAs are not being contested by any other party or individual except the People's Progressive Party. So that means effectively we've won in those areas. The reason I'm belaboring this point, several weeks now, for 3 weeks I've come at this all the time, that it goes to an issue of credibility. And I don't know if people don't see that here is a major political party contesting an election, and its leaders can lie to the people of this country in the face of all of these facts. And when exposed, they double down on their lies. They don't apologize, they don't explain anything. They just continue to perpetrate the lies and not being called out on a question of credibility. Credibility is all that a political party has to trade with in elections. People have to believe your promises because parties run on manifestos and promises. And if you have no credibility, how will you contest? How can they believe that you will fulfill any promise if you will lie about something that is so stark that could be proven as a lie? What else will you do? And that is why it's important. This is a major political party. This is not a small party, the PNC. But to continue to lie about this issue is just one that is unbelievable. In another country where you had a robust competitive media, he would have never been able to live down this lie. A lie that could so easily be proven, and where you have the information. It was shared with the media, the detailed information to expose the lie. It has not been exposed fully. And I hope that that will happen over the course of the next few weeks. We have heard again Mr. Norton saying, there is a news report saying he has backed down from his threat to stop the local government elections. So the threat was, nobody took the threat seriously in the first case. In the first place, no one did, because he could not stop the local government elections with a few protesters in front of GCOM trying to magnify a lie about fraud on a list, a lie that we have grown accustomed to hearing from APNU all of our lives. They continue to talk about fraud in the submission. We have now information, and that's why we've just moved past a lot of that. I've said to people, if they are the subject of fraud, then they must go to the police. The police is the appropriate body to investigate fraud and have action taken against those who have perpetrated fraud. So we have moved on because now we're in the campaign mode. But APNU's lies keep following them all over the place. A staff from GCOM has just written a letter complaining that APNU forged his name and placed him as a candidate in Region 8. And when he spoke with the mayor of Region Madia, the person said, this is kind of normal. So I don't doubt that the man was being honest, the mayor, because that is the norm for the PNC. I don't doubt it. He was being honest, that is the norm. So because it could affect the work, if you can be a candidate in the list and then be a staff of GCOM. So now the person there has a big problem because his job is at stake because the APNU forged his name and put it on the list of candidates. Now, I don't want to give you the name of the person, but I guess this will hit the media soon, but not from me. Just to show you that APNU shouts the loudest about electoral fraud. We have come to recognize that, a point that we spoke about last week. But they have been and are the only offending party who have sought consistently to cheat at elections, consistently. So much for talking about fraud and elections process. I've seen another at the press conference that when asked about the SLED program, two things Mr. Norton did. He sought to say this happened and we should seek answers from some of his colleagues. And then he actually said he doesn't see anything wrong with members of parliament getting money from the SLED program. And so two things. Mr. Norton himself has come in for criticism on accountability in the party. But that's their own business. That's the PNC's business. But he is being accused by his treasurer of having directed the treasurer to sign several checks, blank checks basically, and leave them with him. And then we've heard further that expenditure made on these checks are not reported to the Central Committee of that party. So Mr. Norton has a lot of questions to answer about their personal accountability. But this is government's money, the SLED program. So again, it reveals a mindset, and that's what I'm trying to convey to the people of this country, that APNU has a mindset that is not good for the country, both on several fronts. They believe in undemocratic ways of getting to power and hanging on to power, and that has been demonstrated. They will cry foul at every step of the way whilst perpetrating the fraud themselves. But they don't see a problem, and Norton doesn't see a problem in the leadership of the party creaming the benefits that are designed to help ordinary people, or like small entrepreneurs across this country, creaming the benefits for themselves in this elite that they call government when they were there in the 5 years, and now he defends it as members of parliament. What do I mean when I say that? So we saw a lot of ways where APNU operated. The first 6 weeks that they got into office, they increased the wages and salaries for ministers by between 50 to 100%. Having criticized in the past wages and salaries under the PPP, saying ministers were making too much money. That was one of their first acts in government, although they promised within the first 100 days they would substantially increase the benefits to the joint services and everyone. Yet they subsequently took away the joint services bonus, 1 month tax-free bonus. But the first priority of the government was to increase ministers' salaries by between 50 to 100%. Secondly, whilst the healthcare system deteriorated, they introduced for ministers a private insurance scheme for ministers and their families, health care scheme for ministers and their families. It was supposed to be contributory scheme, that the government will pay 50% and the ministers themselves will pay the other 50% of the premium. The government ended up paying all of it. So they were getting their families, the ministers and their families were getting, they had private health insurance to go abroad for the smallest things in the world, paid for by the taxpayers of this country. That was not there under the PPP pre-2015. In fact, we have discontinued it when we got into office. It's been discontinued. On scholarships, if you look at who got creamed the scholarships and the high-paying ones, it was again some ministers and their children. And large sums of money, $30 million, $45 million scholarships going to them again. So they don't see any problem, and Norton doesn't see any problem with things that are designed to help the country, like the SLED program, with small entrepreneurs, people, etc. They didn't see a problem with doing all of these things. I can go down the long list of things that they took for themselves. They changed the per diem policy, made it a direct charge on the consolidated fund. So when a minister collected money to travel, whether they traveled or not, they didn't have to clear the accounts. The president and the prime minister, they shifted it to unlimited funds when they travel. All of that happened in the APNU period. You had over $600 million spent on vehicles for ministers. The most expensive vehicle that we've ever bought in the country, and President Granger still has it now, was bought in that area for the president. They did not see a problem with this. So he doesn't see a problem with one member of parliament under the SLED program collecting $165 million for distribution in Region 9. And if you look at the audit report, family members were the beneficiaries of the program. That individual, the PNC MP who is there now, who collected the $165 million from the SLED program, if you read the audit, he got more money to distribute than all the villages, the score of villages in Region 9, all the Amerindian villages. So Norton doesn't see a problem with that. It's the mindset that we're talking about. We have a small business grant program. No minister has benefited from it, and or a member of parliament, and we've now literally given out thousands of grants to small people. It's small, like you know, in the last year. You've seen it done publicly, not in any private way or so. We've seen also in some of the PNC bigwigs following up with the same pattern, the PNC bigwigs getting access to the LCDS money. We've seen the land policy where some people got several hundreds of acres without anything for small people. So it's a mindset again, and Norton does not see anything wrong with this. And this is why we argue today that the party has not changed. They have nothing to offer the people of this country. Nothing. They're not even remorseful of what they did in 5 years. They see it as the norm. I'm not going to speak much about Coretta MacDonald. She spoke about GT. GT, the teachers union, was going to strike, and then therefore the government hurriedly met them. Now, Coretta MacDonald, I've spoken about this before, used to come to the leader of the opposition office and complain about not being able to get a meeting with the minister on the APNU. Where a team came to my office, several occasions complained. I started raising this issue at a press conference. Eventually, they met. And even when they met, they were not satisfied. She complained about APNU eroding the agreement that we've had when I was president, when we gave the teachers 100 duty-free vehicles per year, and we established a fund for housing. And that APNU had eroded all of that. Just complaining about it. I was shocked to see when she joined the APNU list, but knowing what she said then, but nothing has changed now. The PPP, if you look at teachers' welfare across this country, it's been at its best under a PPP government, and we've worked hard to change this. the education sector today is getting a lot of attention. And I saw Mr. Lowe at the press conference chipping in on education and saying, oh, the share of the budget, he is the economist who is not the economist, saying the share of education in the budget has fallen. It's true, but it's relative. If you look at an economist has to understand the difference between relative and absolute. So when the budget grows because of the big projects, the oil and gas, etc., which are finite projects, they will be part of your budget for a while and then they will disappear when they're completed. The bridge, the roads, etc. So it's entirely possible that your shares of a particular sector in a budget of that nature, when you have an aggressive budget to transform the infrastructure of this country, will drop. In those cases, an economist, to see whether the government still has education as a priority, will go to the absolute numbers. So what are the absolute numbers? In 2022, the capital budget was $7.9 billion, and in 2023, it was $17.6 billion, an increase of about 122% for the education sector. That shows that it remains a priority. So coming back to this whole issue, the teachers of this country have to understand that they would have a relationship with the government that is respectful and that will work constantly to improve their well-being. It was the teachers who came and complained to us that the union, and particularly leadership of the union, was using the 100 duty-free vehicles that we gave them, and we said the union will decide, that they were using it to intimidate some people, to keep them in line. People had to toe the line because then they would not get recommended for one of these duty-free vehicles. Two, they were giving it out through a process of favoritism, families, friends and families and all of that. It was the teachers who complained to us that we must discontinue this practice of allowing the unions to decide, the union to decide who must get the vehicle, because they were using it to consolidate a particular PNC cabal in there. And we've seen now Coretta McDonald is partisan. She can find nothing. She heads the union but tries to take it down a political path. The teachers have to be wise as to this, and I think most of them are wise, that in spite of all APNU did to erode this sector, this has happened. Talking about education and children, the grant was zero on the APNU, because we care grant. This year, you know what it is. How much money has been budgeted? $8.6 billion. So $8.6 billion will go into the pockets of the parents of the children of this country this year that they didn't have on the APNU, any year of the APNU. That's how much priority we've accorded to the sector. So people have to go back to practice and to expose these issues. I heard that the AFC had a press conference, but very few people listened to them. But by the way, the AFC, although they said they're not contesting the elections, they're busy campaigning for APNU. They're campaigning for APNU. So this farce that Ramjatan said publicly, that we exposed, the farce about them not being part of the coalition in the future, from, I think, January 1, still collaborating in Parliament. We exposed that as a tactic to win back a lot of the people who left them because of that collaboration with APNU. And, but, but on the ground, they're solidly welded together because the AFC was as or even more venal, more corrupt than APNU in office. So they don't offer a better alternative. And separation or perceived separation as a tactic, or this public divorce but privately sleeping together, this is not going to fool the people of the country. Ramjatan is a pathetic shadow of a leader. You look at him now, and he goes around. Without APNU, they're nothing, the AFC. And so we're not too bothered about this. I see Ms. Norton again, and this, as I said before, a political press conference. I want to deal with a lot of stuff, but let's come back to the main point here. So what are you going to campaign on? What, that being APNU. How do they go to campaign for local government elections in the city? What do they say to people in the city? People in the 5 years lost jobs. They took away their children's money. They layered us with a whole range of taxes on all sorts of things. Never fulfilled their promises. In fact, they said the first 100 days they will take off the taxes on mining, and they increase 3 taxes on the miners within a year. So what are you going to say to the people in Georgetown about your national program? You don't have credibility. Nobody would believe you. You've been an abysmal failure in 5 years. And then at the city council, you've been there for nearly 60 years since independence. What are we going to promise more? More Yobraj Narang in the city council? More not cleaning the drains? More not collecting the garbage? That's what you're going to promise? More of trying to sell out every bit of the land in the city. There's a corrupt cabal operated by the APNU now. They're scanning all the waterfronts, any plot of land that under city control now, and trying to get them deals through the private businessmen, selling them out or giving the land to lease, or through leases. We've had to try to intervene to try to stop some of it. That is what is going on there, the cabal there, and they want to continue doing that. I've seen some businessmen brought agreements to us to show if they can do this, because whether the government will oppose it. They're just giving away practically all the assets that we have at City Hall. They're busy doing that sort of thing. You have a particular individual there who is notorious there, and he's on their list again. He's on their list. And so that's what you're going to promise. What are you going to go to Lodge and say to the people in Lodge, or North Rumveld, or West Rumveld? More of the same? So they have a hard time in campaigning. So they can't promise anymore. And I see the same thing in Linden. What are they going to promise the people in Linden, in the town council? More of the same. So they're resorting just to put flyers of the pictures of their constituency candidates. We will do that too. But we have a message that we'll take to every home in the city about what and around the country. But in the city and in Linden and New Amsterdam and all the areas we're contesting, a message that we will stand by. We will stand by, that the PPP government will stand by every single one of these promises that we're making at the local government level as we have done at the national level. We're going to stand by every one of those promises. So when you see a flyer from the PPP that comes to your home in the city or somewhere else, you can rest assured that our credibility backs that, the credibility of the People's Progressive Party when our team comes around. That is what we will promise in around these areas. Contrast that with what they have to offer. What are they going to say to people? More the same, more wastage. So they have a very hard time. So that's what they have resorted to. They're resorting to the whisper campaign. So again, it's the racism. It's a racism. This is an Indian party that doesn't care about anybody else. Two, the vendors will be removed. They go and whisper to the vendors. They've gone to South Georgetown and said to some of the people who are living under parapets, as soon as the PP takes over here, if they win, they're going to throw you out. The scare campaign. The scare campaign. You can't ask, and I want to urge those people when they come to say, what are you going to do about for us? Because you've been there for all these years, you've done nothing. So we are now in the process of dealing with a lot of these issues. There have been lots of things in the media and about, again, I thought that having had the detailed explanation and the story in the Starbuck News that followed the editorial, which really sets out how the agency and how it has operated for over a decade, the NISA, that by now some of the public hysteria around, or selective, and I shouldn't say public hysteria, because I'm condemning a large group of people here. I should say selective hysteria about the bill would have abated. But it seems as though there is, in a country where you have a group of people whose only purpose, their only existence is to try to run down everything that the PPP does, that would have been basically a faint hope of mine. It was just wishful thinking. So, as is predictably, we've seen this continuing. So the president made it clear that given some additional concerns, we will send the bill to the Select Committee. Now, they had to repeat all of the issues in the old bill, so the bill now would be subject to intense debate in the Select Committee, and then provisions can be changed. You'd have a full debate, all the opposition concerns. There's no time limit for it to stay in the Select Committee. And the concerns can be addressed there about the bill, with the legislators having in-depth discussions. So they've still gone back on the old the provisions, but more importantly, Gulsaran, who becomes an expert on everything, on national security now, he said, oh, the president violated the separation of power, that the president is part of the executive and he can't tell the legislature what to do. Now, clearly, anyone who has a sensible understanding of the parliamentary system in Guyana would know that ministers are voting members of the legislature. And the way our system works is that the cabinet members sit in the legislature. So, unlike the US system, where you can have a cabinet member who is not part of the legislature, Our Constitution says that cabinet ministers have to be coming from, be a member of the parliament, and therefore, or the National Assembly, and therefore a legislator. So the president can say the bill originated in the cabinet. This bill originated in the cabinet. The legislators on the government side were told to take the bill to the parliament. It's entirely within the purview of the president and his authority to say to them, have that bill go to the select committee. This is the issue that Gulsaran discusses. Nitpicking, pettiness is all, and it demonstrates a profound lack of understanding of the way our system works. But they have to get a word in on everything. For Peking duck eggs came from China, and they want us to tell them how many chicks would hatch, if it's 6 chicks would hatch from the 4 eggs or not. That's the Gulsaran of the world. Everything under the sun. So this bill here will go to the legislature. As the article pointed out, that this agency has been in operation for a very long time. And now there's time to give it legislative cover so that the appropriation could be made directly to the body, and it could be have public scrutiny. It's an attempt to shine more light on the agency. But we saw everybody wants consultation. But the practice is that people shout a lot and then they do very little. So I'm told that the data protection bill, you recall that the same individual, Gulsaran and a few others, were saying, why sign a contract for biometrics and a new ID card and you don't have a data protection bill? So we had said at that time, long before the cards are issued and the biometrics collected, we will have the law in place. The law was drafted, posted on the Ministry of Legal Affairs website on the 15th of April for 21 days. Today, up to today, I'm told by the ministry, the Attorney General, that they have not had a single comment on the law. And it's posted for consultations and for people to share their views. Posted on the website. Until now, not a single comment on it. So, the big clamor, the government is not consulting, the government is not doing, is not following the law, etc. And then no public comment. We saw the same thing with the PSA. We posted the PSA, and then the comments were very few. Very few. APNU until now is still thinking about whether it will make a comment or not on the PSA. Big hullabaloo about the PSA all along, and very few comments on the PSA, the draft. The Representation of People Act. We posted it for 6 weeks initially. We ended up having it in the public domain for over 3 months. And very few agencies, GCOM, and I think an electoral body sent in a few comments, and a couple of other people. Very, very few people commented on this. When we put the documents out for public consultations, the same naysayers who have a lot of things to say because they get into the papers and they have a forum where they can't be rigorously tested. They write the garbage and then it goes down as fact. A lot of garbage gets written, goes down as fact, because they don't have a robust contestation. And they're now required to defend their views publicly, because then you'll see how shallow the views are. But when the time comes to contribute, to make the documents better, to actually do the things that they say they want done, they'll never lift a finger. Because you know what? Many of them don't have original views. And many of the things that they talk, you can't put it in a sensible suggestion. You can put it in a letter to the newspaper or some nonsensical article, but you can't do that. I'm just demonstrating here again that this is a government that has been moving on lots of things. Every day, we have a heavy legislative agenda, apart from an economic agenda and a rights agenda. We have enhanced the rights of our people. In the PPP government, every single right that people enjoyed historically has been expanded and consolidated through constitutional provisions. Constitutional provisions. If you look at the rights commissions that we established when we were in office, etc., through the constitutional reform arrangements. We have done that historically. But every single day, on all of these issues, we're not just having the chat gaff in the newspapers. The hard work, the drafting and the tough policy directions to the drafters that are needed are given, and the documents produced, they're put out in the public domain, but they can never satisfy a group of people out there who are specialists on everything. Specialists on everything, but when you actually call on their expertise, they have none to offer in a productive way. So I'm just saying, we don't have to be defensive in the PPP about the volume of work and changing the country, modernization of the financial architecture of this country, but all of our rights and the laws that would expand people's ability to do business here, go about with, have a better interface and get better services from government. The single window bill, which we have sent to the select committee again, will transform. APNU could have done that. Will transform the way that people, an ordinary citizen of this country now, will get permit to build. Don't have to go to City Hall all the time and bribe somebody or run down an engineer there or pay them to draft your or to design your building. So then only if you pay them to do that, then they will get it approved. And this has happened. We know the practice there. This single window bill would allow people to move swiftly, smoothly to construction of homes and business buildings, whilst not diminishing the requirements and the standards, but making it a bit more friendly to people. And that's before the parliament. That's substantive piece of legislation. All of these things we're talking about are substantive pieces of legislation that we've placed in parliament. And therefore, I would say to the others, share your views, because it's going to come, it's before the select committee, Denise, now. If you have these profound views, and when conflicted, when asked some tough questions, why is it that you think we should not have an agency like this when almost every country has one like this? Oh, we're different. But we still have the major challenges. We have huge, as we go more online with our national ID card, with biometrics in it, as e-passports, when we start doing a paperless airport, the clearance system, more and more our systems, when the new Wales power plant is completed, more and more of our systems management systems, services, etc., would be online. Cybersecurity will become, in the past, not a big issue for us, will become now a very important aspect of government's responsibility to see that our infrastructure is not hacked. There we saw what happened recently with Venezuela, hacking one of our websites. That could happen with people now holding us, the country, to ransom. So that becomes important too. We face increased threats from criminals, transnational crime, from all sorts of things, from terrorism. So these agencies are needed as the country gets more sophisticated. We had it there, Granger was using it. So I don't know what's the big hullabaloo about. On the issue, I saw the Marriott has resurfaced again. And people I think they are saying, oh, I shouldn't have said that at a party press conference. Well, I've said things at a government press conference that are party related. I can't separate who I am. And media ask me questions here that are government related. So that's nonsense. I'm not wasting my time behind those people. So, but the key thing is that first, it was a bad project. Then it's a good project. Then we shouldn't sell it. Then we should sell it. We should sell it to the lowest bidder. Now we're trying to get too much money for it now, for selling it. That's it. It is this madness. Madness. And along the way, we've proven all of the naysayers wrong. Along the way, we've proven at every instance naysayers wrong. And those who talk about the price-earning ratio now from some Wall Street analysts and all of that, we've proven all of them wrong. And if we do sell this, it will be at a higher price. So we, some people talking, oh, people can ask back for their money on the bid and stuff. We know, they don't understand that almost in every one of these cases, it says the government is not obligated to accept the highest bid. You have different forms of valuation. You can look at the earning capacity, you can look at the value of the asset, and a whole range of things, a breakup value of the asset, a whole range. I'm not going to get into that detail, but we will prove again the naysayers wrong. We'll prove them wrong on this. So I've seen a lot of that sort of thing come up. I see the AFC has now weighed in and said that Prem Mizir is not competent. He's a professor, he's not competent. I know Jadupat, the person who they had there before. I know him personally. You should find out where he was working before he came to Ghana. He was in New York, where he was working before he came to Ghana and before he joined the AFC campaign. He was selected without any public process. But it's okay to select APNU like Vincent Adams and Ajadupat without a public process, without any ad in the newspaper, and they're the competent ones, and not go through an open process where you have people apply and you review the applications, etc., then select one. Those are incompetent. But again, it falls into the very narrative that the EITI group has been perpetrating. So I think I'm going to end here today. I think I'm going to end here today. Yeah, thank you. Huh?
Regarding parent company liability and government has signaled its intention to appeal.
Yeah, the Attorney General has advised that that should be done, and I agree with him. Now, clearly, I think we all want to ensure as a country that in the case of a spill, hopefully it would never happen, that we have adequate resources to cover all of the liabilities associated with the spill, the cleanup, and to address any other liabilities. So we all want this. But we also can't be shrill and capricious in our dealings, in our discussions, particularly at the level of our regulatory agencies, to get that outcome. We have to pursue diligently, professionally, that outcome, which is to get, as a country, a coverage, insurance coverage that will meet all the circumstances should we have an adverse event offshore. It's important that institutions act in that manner, in a professional manner, because we are now attracting large volumes of capital from around the world. The eyes of the world are focused on Guyana, and what could have passed in the past as some sort of nationalism or economic nationalism will not hold water in the new dispensation. People need to know before they put their capital here, and we still need capital because the investable capital in this country, if you look at the aggregate deposits in our banking system, they can't build one FPSO. All our aggregate deposits, that's from all of our businesses and individuals in the banking system, that's all the money we have on savings, can't build a single FPSO. But it's not only for the oil and gas sector. If we want people to build hotels, we want them to come and invest in agriculture, in everything else. So the quality of institutions and their professionalism would be important to this task that we've set ourselves as a country, to be a destination to attract more capital, to transform this country, and to ensure that our people benefit from that investment. So our courts have to make predictable decisions, not in favor, I'm not saying in favor of the government or against the government, but it has to be well reasoned. Our Environmental Protection Agency has to be able to justify professionally everything they do without interference from the politicians. So like when we were doing the audit, we did the audit, and the executive said, we are not going to tell the technical people, you got to complete this within 3 days, because then they will say we are rushing them, they don't have time to exercise due diligence and to go through a proper process. The audit is going on, the technical agencies are doing this. So too the EPA has been at this for a very long time. The EPA has been engaged for over a year in these discussions about the parent guarantee. Now, the law speaks about the full liability coverage that is in EEPGL. That is the local company that is issued with a permit must have full liability coverage. And they have now given a $600 million policy, the certificates which are deposited with the EPA, and they have to pay a premium on this, and that premium is charged to the cost oil. If that gets increased, it is the premium we have to pay it from cost oil. So that's the first line of coverage. The second line of coverage is the total assets of the company. So if a company is here and the 600 million US is not adequate, then the EPA has recourse to the maybe $6-8 billion of assets that the local company now has based on its balance sheet that was made public. So that's the second line of defense. Then it speaks about adequate parent company the coverage, adequate, not full liability or unlimited, because that's why the Attorney General made the point that there is nowhere in the world a concept like unlimited. How do you take out an unlimited insurance policy? What would be the premium? If I say $1 billion, unlimited doesn't define a number, because the number determines the premium. So there's nothing called like that in the world of insurance. Unlimited. You can have full coverage, but even that coverage there is a defined risk for the company. So I'm not going to run down the judge. I think a lot of things were not understood clearly, and sometimes it gets a bit complex. Here, this decision needs to be appealed by the EPA because it makes the EPA look like it's not doing its work. The EPA is staffed with professionals, and it has been doing its work, protecting the interests of the country, more than all of these individuals who've been shouting every day at the top of their voices, but get paid from international NGOs. So for that reason, and secondly, it's hard. My own thing is that when the judiciary can interpret maybe several issues or laws, etc., but I think it's treading on murky waters when you start directing a regulatory agency as to how to do its own job and give them a time frame to get it done in. Because you can't supplant yourself and know what the challenges they face in that. So as the Attorney General said, the EPA will do that. But for the last month, I've said, the ruling that it should be done in a month, I've said that about a month ago, that it was close to finish. And last week I said that the agreement has practically been settled for $2 billion of the parent guarantee now. This is not EEPGL's responsibility, which by our law, that's the local company, should have a full liability coverage. So there are two different things. One is adequate and the other is full. And so we need to we need to just make sure that this is understood clearer. I don't know what happened. I saw the judge said that he didn't get the documents from the EPA, but I know a lot of work has been done. And so we are not going to take it in a manner that's hostile, but we need to make sure that our institutions don't act based on economic nationalism or the peripheral noise out there. We're playing in the big leagues now. We're not a backwater country where you can do whatever you want and get away with it. And that is, for that reason alone, I think the decision should be appealed. I agree with the Attorney General that it should be appealed. And that's how I deal with it. But the EPA has been working. Nobody wants this more. I would have loved Exxon to give us a $500 billion coverage. But for you to offer us a guarantee, it has to be supported by money on their balance sheets too. Means. So if they don't have it on their balance sheet, they have to go back to their shareholders. Many of these are publicly traded companies. And then which shareholder would say, oh, you have to give an unlimited guarantee? So what are we into this? What about it becomes 300 billion and the government assesses it like 300 billion? Of course, it wouldn't be. I'm just exaggerating. Yes, please.
On the topic of teachers, President Ali before said committed to salary adjustments for teachers. Can we perhaps say if there's been any movement on providing those salary adjustments to teachers? And secondly, labor shortages seems to be a growing problem. We hear about it all the time. Is there any sort of short-term fix right now? Are you targeting specific sectors to sort of give them priority?
The labor shortage, it's a huge problem, and the business community is complaining they're not getting labor. A lot of works are ongoing for housing construction, roads, almost everything. The country is a building boom. So we have allowed, and we're allowing some labor to come here, but without opening a floodgate. And the reason why we're doing this is because in some parts of the country, we still have pockets of unemployment. In other parts of the country, like in Region 4 and maybe now to 3, it's easier for people to find a job, and they're already running up against labor shortages. So that's one. So we don't want to open up to like mass import of labor, and then we still have our own people in many parts of the country can't find a job. And that's why we're encouraging a lot of the people who need workers, say in Georgetown or the oil and gas industry. We said to them, why not build facilities? So if people are coming from, say, Linden or maybe Region 1 or Region 6, they can stay in these facilities and maybe go back on weekends. And also that they get, until we can get more investments in those communities, which is going to happen over time, as we have a plan to take jobs and more economic activities into the rural areas, into Linden and the hinterland. So that is a big concern of ours. We don't want to act in an unthinking way. 2, we're trying to get more women into the labor force. So the part-time job, a lot of women have started, for many of them, are the first time they come out of their home. And we're hoping that that would just, once you come out the home for the first time, you start working, even if it's for 10 days, starts building a work ethic. Not that they didn't have a work ethic, because many work very hard at home, but you know, to come into the formal labor market now. And we could easily bring in probably mainly rural hinterland, maybe from Region 10, women, maybe 100,000 women into the workforce. Um, in the urban centers, female have been working more, but in the rural areas, not many have been working outside of the house. So that's another area. Then there's some skill types that we're pushing ahead with training for. So heavy equipment operators that you can do small training for. Electricians, plumbers, carpenters. These are high demand skill areas in the construction boom. So some training in these areas. And then, and I said selectively allowing. So a lot of the big projects, if for example, the Chinese are going to build a bridge. They said to us they were working in Qatar building the stadium for World Cup. And they have workers there from Bangladesh and other places. They want to bring the workers because they work with them. We probably allow that, because if we don't, they would take from the existing people, and then we would have even greater shortages. So for the big projects, we're allowing some of the workers to come in, and then I know some businessmen who are importing some skill types that we don't have here. So it is a nuanced policy. It's not a broad-based open immigration policy at this time, because we want to get all of our people, our own people across the country, Guyanese, working for us, getting good paying jobs and stuff. Then you can be a bit more liberal. That's the first issue. On the teachers, yes, I know the president had mentioned this some time back, and I'm sure that that's being addressed. But what we did, and I think he meant, it's not a generalized increase. It is the differentiation. We had, for example, 3 sets of nurses with the same skills earning different salaries. We had nurses at the Georgetown Public Hospital, nurses employed by the ministry, and nurses employed by the regions. And same skill type, same years on the job, and as much as a $30,000, $40,000 differential in their salaries. What we did in the adjustments last year is we brought everybody on par. So that sort of technicians, etc., depending on who employed you and where you're employed, you had major problems of that nature. So it is like fixing the problems and not just a problem, but it's not discrimination, I'm looking for a better word, the anomalies that were there and there for a while, where people with the same skills were earning, in the same public sector, were earning different salaries. And so we did that in the health sector. And so too in the education sector. What we're thinking about is that we want our teachers to be trained. So we're moving to get all of our teachers trained. And then there should be a gradation based on years in service, salary gradation, and also on qualification. So if someone goes and take the effort to get a master's and it's recognized, they shouldn't get the same salary like somebody who has a first degree. And that is what the president was talking about. So we're still looking at that. We've done it for that sector and a couple of other areas in government, the health sector, a couple of other areas. We're looking at the same issue.
Do you know when you might be able to fix the anomalies by when?
No, I'm reluctant to give the dates because the agenda is heavy, but it is something that is actively engaging the attention of the government.
Vice President Jagdeo.
Yes.
Yesterday, for President the Guyana Press Association, its president, Zimra Weir, had an article on Actual News on page as it relates
Lloyd, can you give me some more, please?
There's been no proof in the articles or witticism.
I didn't get that. What was it?
The Indiana Press Association, in an article in Fashion from page yesterday, for World Press Freedom Day, states GKC's government's move to derail takeover association. In that article, basically we're flying. That has been followed by a boycott. Some sections of the media not here, the various coverage. How do you see that affecting the People's Progressive Party campaign? What do you have to say?
I know. Politicians should walk carefully around this issue, because your comments could be distorted, and then the distortion gets replicated and magnified. But I think, as the General Secretary of a party, I have a duty to say that we are always supportive of freedom of the press. As a party, we have fought for this. We know what it was when the PNC had banned newsprint in this country. They banned you being able to bring in print, so you could not print your newspapers. People had to smuggle newsprint into the country, the paper, to print the newspapers on, because the Catholic Standard in the early days and the Mirror, they couldn't get paper to print because the PNC had banned it. So we know those days where we came from, when there was only the state media. We've come a long way. When journalists were killed or threatened to be killed, you remember Father Dark. Journalist was killed by PNC thugs, recorded. So what we enjoy today is a far cry from the history under the PNC. And so, as a political party that fought to change all of this, now not just return democracy to this country, but change that, we have a vested interest in ensuring that we have a free, competitive media. We don't censor people. We will respond. As I said before, we have a duty, if we believe that we're treated unfairly in the media, to point this out. But we will defend the right of the media to say it. We'll defend that right even if it is misguided. In our view, it's misguided. We will defend that right for them to say it. Except when it borders on criminality. That is what we have seen a lot of the online stuff that calls themselves media, like, well, it's not really media, it's commentators. That's they like the Burks and the others I'm talking about. That's downright criminal. But sometimes they hide. The bench cop, he hides behind being media. Like, so today he was at Norton's conference as a media house, but he acts in a downright criminal fashion. He and Burke and the others. That's out of, we're not going to fight to defend that. That's outside criminality. But everyone else, we'll fight for that right. So let me say that right at the beginning. We believe journalists should be treated fairly in spite of what they're right. We are aware of the fact that maybe some journalists who work for media houses that are not aligned to us, and it might be uncomfortable for them, but they have a job and they're pursuing their job. So we must not go after the journalists themselves, because we know what the editorial policy of some of these newspapers are. And I don't have to be be things like the Kaichor News. It has an editorial policy that dumbs down a lot of the professional work done by many journalists in there for a particular purpose. So having said all of this, I want to make it clear. We believe in press freedom. We fight to maintain press freedom. We believe journalists should be treated with respect. But people have to be fair also, because to call yourself journalists, you also have to be fair. If you're a politician posing as a journalist, then that's a different matter. And we have many of those. So has it escaped anyone's notice in this country that Nazima Raghubir pathologically hates the People's Progressive Party? Has it escaped anyone's notice? Has it, this is it, pathologically. And forget that. They would accept, it's almost every time they issue a press release about the PNC. The PNC could just threaten the reporters. And then in that press release, it has to say something about the PPP. So that is it. So I believe that there's a campaigning, and you asked me about the GPA and the statement. I believe they're campaigning now because they have long overdue elections. The GPA, long overdue elections. And it's easier to hold an election of the GPA than a national election. But we are moving ahead with the national elections with all APNU's attempt at lists, etc. I think you have a smaller list here. I don't know how many hundreds you have, but it's easy to verify your list. You could do it in one day. It's easier to do that, but it's long overdue. And now, because of fears that there may be changes, so the boogeyman is always the PPP. And to make some of the journalists feel that if they vote for a different person in there, that they're part of some government plot. It is like trying to shame the journalists or the members of the press association into voting for status quo. So I believe that this is part of the campaign. So for the boogeyman, PPP is trying to derail the press association, trying to take over the press association. So I'm the champion of an independent press association. So vote for me. Don't vote for anyone else. It's part of the campaigning. Now, I would urge Nazima Raghubir, please don't use the PPP as your campaign tool. We have enough trouble otherwise to do that. We don't want to be part of your internal campaigning here. But I believe that, like the others, as I said before here, that a lot of this talk of racism here by APNU doesn't have resonance with people here anymore. They can't get through. They're upset that the PPP is a party that's expanding in every area among Afro-Guyanese, etc. When they are moribund, they are dying. So the message, racist message that they carry don't have resonance. So they've taken the campaign abroad. Nigel Hughes speaking at some forum there, etc. They can mislead people abroad. They can't mislead Guyanese. We've seen the same thing happen with Transparency International of Guyana. We jumped up on the TI, the Transparency International index globally, because they relied on a report from Guyana that said APNU is doing a great job. And they did all of these transparent things, the 2019 report. So we jumped up on the index. We're performing well. So too, I think that the Press Association and this big hype, knowing that the report is coming out now, and so Guyana suddenly dropped 26 points on the report. They knew the report was coming up. And I think it was an orchestrated attempt by some media practitioners, and I'm calling them media practitioners, who are politically aligned to stir up issues that are non-issues. Issues that are non-issues into knowing it would influence the ranking. So suddenly President Ali, he hosted something there, and that was the big issue. So we jumped 26 points because some reporter went there. Reporters are getting killed around the world, and the countries don't drop 26 points. But we dropped 26 points because the Press Association, again, sent something. And notice everything they sent was repeated by the international organization. So like with TIGI again, post-press conference, so President Ali made some comment there. There was some journalist who was attacked from Kaichor News. I condemn it here, right here, unreservedly. Didn't say that, unreservedly. And that's the 2 point. And then 3, there was no post-cabinet press briefing. But the content is not how many, the form. APNU used to have post-cabinet press briefing. Harman came there. What did you get policy-wise from it? You got nothing practically as a country. They didn't answer a single policy question. We've had press conferences where we dealt in every policy. I've just talked today about tackling cybercrime and our policy on that, the data protection bill, the single window bill, the new ROPA, a new PSA, the new act, the Petroleum Act, new Local Content Act. All of these things we've gone through the profession, amendment of the Natural Resources Fund Act. No, the content matter. It's not, every time somebody from the cabinet has to come and routinely speak to people. Are we more interested in form? Yet that gets repeated by the international organization. It came from the same press association. This was done for a purpose, political purpose. It was done, it was timed perfectly to get that to happen. But people here know of what's happening. They know in Guyana. They can tell you who the people are. And so the press association, you know how polarized it is. You got an APNU camp and some who are pro-PPP. It's polarized. And you know who is in the APNU camp too, and who has been there consistently. Adam Harris calls himself a journalist, and he goes to the press conference with Norton and addresses him. Somebody pointed this out to me last week, I think. Comrade Leader. That's his, before he asks a question, Comrade Leader. That's how he addresses Norton. Who does that at a press conference, Comrade Leader? You guys go and listen to that. And he's seen as the doyen of journalists and the conscience of journalism. And when he was trying to change up all the articles in the 5 months period in Kaichor News, which led to his termination, people know. So I don't worry about all these indices and again the shrill noise. It is part of the campaigning. There's an intense campaigning going on, and then the elections would be sprung on the press association. And so that's how I'm going to deal with it. Now, you notice nobody mentions the World Justice Project report after I said last week, including the ambassadors. They issue a statement, and that survey done by a US nonprofit and a global body called World Justice Project said that 45% of the media in Guyana is corrupt or mostly corrupt. How do they address that? If I had said that, they'll kill me or kill the politicians. Oh, we're attacking the media. How come nobody mentions this? How come nobody mentions this? I saw in the and I thank the ambassadors and all of that for the statement they issue about press freedom and about the balanced coverage too. But you don't have balanced coverage. Take, for example, a Kite Show News. Since when that's balanced coverage? Can you ever get anything you say of a technical nature reflected in that? They fabricate stories all the time. So how do you deal with that? And then they said we must not be selective about our interviews, who we give interviews to. Imagine the international community saying that. Do you think President Biden, you've ever seen President Biden on Fox News? Or Trump on CNN? So the thing is that those are not the indicators about press freedom. It's about the tolerance of the government. We fought a long time to change that. Tolerance to all sorts of questions. Questions that would not even be tolerated in a setting like you think at the White House, when the questions that are asked of President Ali. You think in the White House you could ask President Biden those questions? And he listens to all of them and he answers to them. The tolerance here is unbelievable. It's not so in many international jurisdictions. To get accredited to the White House, here it's practically anybody could come to our press conferences. To get accredited to the White House, you have to go through a bunch of hoops. Press freedom in this country is secure and will be secure under the PPP. But that doesn't mean that we don't know some of the people and what they're about. And they masquerade under these organizations. This is how I will respond to that question. Yes, or let me go, Kaicho.
I understand that there are serious issues, but something that affects the entire media is the delay in the return of the post-capital question. I understand that the workers are going to ask questions, but the systematic post-capital question, what is causing that to not?
But it's just that different governments have different styles. Different governments have different styles. There is nothing in the law which says you have to have a post-cabinet press briefing. Since when that is becoming a standard in our constitution or we're breaking a law? We have committed to giving information on government policies at press briefings, through statements by ministers, a whole range of stuff. There is no law being broken. There is nothing of that which says that a government must have that. I don't recall when I was president that I had a post-cabinet press briefing every time, but people got information. So there's nothing in the law which says you have to have a post-cabinet press briefing. Sometimes at some cabinet meetings, it's a short meeting, they don't even. And then at other meetings, they have substantive issues, major issues. But everything, every public policy question determined by the cabinet has had full exposition in the country and has been, we've answered all the questions from a policy perspective as to what motivates us to take that policy or the piece of legislation. We have done that. You tell me of a single one that doesn't. Yes.
I know what you said about the heavy workload to working in that time frame, but we spoke to the president of Morocco recently, and her response was that they can't get anything from the government as to when they should release until the finality, till at end. And I want to know if the government is concerned that the heavy period that we have can lead to some kind of, some might say, utilization of the teachers who are waiting and could result in problems.
No, but she was a bit more blunt today. She said, oh, the government, she was asking for a meeting with the government and said, and now she sought to she had a meeting with the government and now said, oh, they only met with us because we were planning a protest. So she doesn't want, she's trying to score political points with the meeting that she's had with the government to talk about the very same issues that she's mentioned. So she's trying to score political points. That's what I meant by when I say I don't pay attention to her, because I know her history. I know when she was struggling to even get a word in to APNU. So they've had meetings, and this is being done by the sector. So a lot of the issues there will be discussed, the same issues raised in the public at that meeting and subsequent one. But she's had a meeting.
Comments on the Jagdeo versus issue. One of the main points made was the increase in salary. And an examination of the duties for more people who show that they have the same workload. So is there a particular reason for the increase?
I think the salary went up by maybe, what, $200,000? It's not, how much? I don't know what the salary structure is, so frankly speaking, I shouldn't comment on it, because I don't know what the salary structure is. Those things are dealt with by the independent organization. So we'd examine it. I'd examine the salary issue. Right. But also, personally, it's a significantly better quality individual. You have to pay for quality sometimes. That hopeless.
On the City Hall getaway, do you know of any deal that actually went through, or are businessmen generally hesitant to do these kinds of things?
They are a bit more hesitant, having heard us. But I'll give you a bit more detail maybe the next time. But you should find out from the people in City Hall which councillors have been going around trying to sell the properties. The APNU councillors have been selling pretty all property. I can't do all the work for you too. I don't mean you personally. Yes, but then now having said that, you can go around and do your bit of investigative journalism, go to the City Hall and say, you're aware, and you might pick up some things that people are reluctant to talk to me because they think they'll get locked up if they come and tell me about it. So the wickedness, but they may be more amenable to talking to you.
But you spoke extensively about UP's progress in Georgetown and your attempts here at PSO. What is going on in Georgetown? What is being here?
Oh no, also, that's what I meant. I spoke about New Amsterdam, Linden, and Georgetown because they keep focusing heavily on that. But New Amsterdam too, we're campaigning on the same thing. We have a specific plan by Friday. Tomorrow is Friday, right? By Saturday, their list of issues. We have had engagements. I've had several engagements in the past here in Georgetown, and then I talked to the people on phone with New Amsterdam, but some of our leaders went down. So we brought people together, all the candidates and other people in the community, and he said, what are the things we can do in the city that are of priority, or in the towns? And so we list the priorities and what can we afford to do. So whatever we are putting there, we're running the litmus test of affordability. So every promise we make, and you will see these in the flyers that go around, you will see that they're something that we can back up, we can actually get done. So, but we can offer things, and the people are very involved, all the candidates, in putting together their own manifesto. So shortly they will be going to every home, taking that message to people. And everywhere we have gone, people are receptive There is no hostility to the PPP except those instigated, but we're overcoming those two. Thanks. Yes, go on.
You noted that even though we have this massive labor shortage in some areas, there are pockets where we still have unemployment issues and persons. So do you see the need for a structured approach to connecting persons looking for a job to the area where the jobs exist? Can there be a pipeline created? Or, for example, we have a national job plan where we have a separate window. If a person is interested in taking on the job, how do they know where to go and how to go about it?
Yes, so there is a lot of work being done through Minister Hamilton on this matter about training people, connecting them with opportunities. We have we had some experience. If I tell you about this, I should. A number of people, we did a survey and they said they want jobs, and so we sent the list around to people who were looking for jobs. And when people call, they say, no, I'm really working. I don't want to go that far. I don't want to travel. That sort of thing we're getting a lot from. So it's not just finding a job. They want a job within a certain area. So we're trying now, and that is why, to see how we can overcome that. Can people come down from Linden with buses? Because Linden has a lot of technical skills we need, like welders and stuff. We may be able to train more people at the Technical Institute. Can you get a bus like in the morning, a bus to bring people down? We wouldn't name it the David G, but we'll call it something else, but a big bus to bring people down to work, and in the evening they go back up. That sort of labor mobility. We're going to fix the highway so it should be easier ride all the way up, and or the same thing from Berbice. Essequibo, it presents itself with a little bit more challenge because it's hard to move people and the hinterland regions. So we're trying to get some of the call centers, business process outsourcing, type of jobs more in those areas. And then a heavy focus on agriculture, increasing productivity in agriculture, so in these areas. So you can have agri-related jobs, where last time I was telling you about the tissue culture lab. So it's not just going in the fields and planting, but moving people up the chain in the agricultural sector, where we now start having professionals in research, doing nurseries, but at a very productive level through the tissue culture program, different things, expanding agriculture. So that is it. But I'm sure we keep working at this. This is not like, there is no silver bullet in this. But I know Minister Hamilton has been doing a lot of that work. And even in Berbice, some of the contractors complain for labor, for construction purposes, they have labor shortages. So also it is, you almost have to talk to people. If someone has been a fisherman all his life, and sometimes that we were doing the fishing grant, we had this discussion with the fishermen because they're accustomed to a particular type of work all their lives. But the work is not a very certain, because the income is not a steady income. There are periods when the catch will go up, and then periods when, you don't have, based on a whole range of factors. So I said to them, why not let us train you to have a second skill? Some people said yes, and we've already started training some people. And others are very reluctant. You almost have to go through and talk people through this. Sit down in smaller groups and say, you're going to be left behind if you keep with one job, but you don't have a steady income. You have to be able, because you would find more construction jobs and other things that pay a significant amount of money. So why not keep doing the fishing, but in your off period, do something else? And I think a lot of that kind of work, we have not been able to do enough of this because we're so busy trying to deal with the big reforms and moving. But we need to do much more of this on the ground. Talking to people, trying to encourage them in the communities to make full use of the opportunities and stuff. So that is crucial. Yes, go on. Yeah. No, they're trying to. They have a database and they try to connect people with potential employees and stuff like that. Not moving people as yet. So we're exploring that. Whether right, we're exploring that. No, but central. No, because we first of all have to get the buy-in from the ground. The buy-in from the ground. And that's where I said we're still a bit deficient in getting that buy-in for people to move. Because to travel from Berbice in the morning, if you have to come from, say, Port Morant, you take nearly 2 hours to get down, and then 2 hours travel up back. So many people don't want that. 2 hours, 4 hours a day traveling. And, or if you're coming from maybe even further, say Manchester or one of these areas. And so that's a big issue, the travel time. So this is why we were suggesting to people, can you have decent accommodation for people? If you're bringing in foreigners, you often have to put them up. So why not try to do the same for Guyanese who come from the regions? And then they can go back on weekends. So when we talk to some of the people on the ground, they say, I don't want to leave my wife alone, or some things like that. You know, you have all kinds of, we're trying to see, because in another country, you have people who drive from Connecticut to come into New York to work, a 2-hour long commute. Here, people don't like long commutes. So it's something that we're struggling with, but the desire is there to try to get all of our people, wherever they live in the whole country, to get more work. So we don't displace them by a large number of foreigners. We get the Guyanese working force. Okay? Yeah, go on. The carnage on the road. Who said that? Oh, see, Paul Lorraine. Okay. Heavy. It is something that the commissioner, I know that the president has mentioned it several times. I know it's a big concern of the cabinet about fatality on our roads. The enforcement is up to the police. I think we have adequate laws. It's just the enforcement. And I hope that they can do much more of this. The speeding, especially with the ace trucks, and to stop those things, because they're so big. I've seen them, and even our roads sometimes they're not made for that kind of new type of vehicle that we often see on it. But it's an enforcement thing. That is why expanding the road network is so critical. Quickly, but also, you're right, it's a carnage in many ways on the road, and the police have to take strong enforcement action. It's up to the police. We pass the laws, and there may be other things about road safety. In other countries, civil society play a bigger role in this. You never see the civil society organizations come out in a major way. They used to be in the past. There were a couple, I think Women in Black, I met them a few times years ago. But this is where civil society should be playing a big role in educating people. On the May Day thing, I saw Lincoln Lewis. He had 15 points. The first one is, thou shalt not covet the people's land in Berbice. So he had 15 points. But that was the first one. He's covered Lincoln Lewis. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.